2102C that will require a residential property manager if the owner lives outside of 35 miles. I believe that's an important aspect. Bill wondered about the distance, and that is a good point. 2102C that will require a residential property manager if the owner lives outside of 35 miles. I believe that's an important. So that's how I really sound.
Not bad.
Yeah. So if that keeps on echoing, we'll try to do the best we can. So Jeff, I'm assuming, unless I hear from you in a second, that you don't really have any comments on that property manager aspect.
I guess I would be curious what Councilman Harold thinks would be a more appropriate distance. 35 miles does seem, maybe a little burdensome. I mean, what is the goal? We want somebody who's able to respond to an emergency within the hour.
Yeah, I didn't have a set amount. I generally go towards multiples of 2 or prime numbers. But I was more curious with how the 35 was arrived at, and not to really have a strong argument one way or the other. Just kind of curious why it was 35.
No, I made it up.
I'm sorry, you made it up? Oh, you did not make up. The number 35 has been around for many years.
That's the guy.
Okay.
It was a good place to start.
Well, if Mike Marsh makes the number up, it's fine with me.
Well, I have not heard any complaints or feedback from property owners on this piece, but if there are any listening who think that that would be overly burdensome, I would certainly be willing to take a closer look at it at that point. But it seems as good as a number as anything, I suppose.
Yeah,
I would agree, Jeff, and I think this will be certainly discussed, by the full council as we go forward. So, we may well come back to that.
yeah, I would hate that there would be someone that's already employed that's 36 miles away and would have to move. So, yeah.
Good points all. 12102D announces what would be, should this pass, the initial registration period. And this was written a while ago, so these dates we will need to revisit. But in the legislation, it says March 1st of this year until December 31st of this year. What I'd like to see, personally, I'd love to see it end in 2021. I think this is a piece that's been long overdue. What I would suggest is that if this passes council, that we apply a date at that point, May 1st to the end of the year, whatever. But clearly the dates right now are impossible. Bill, Jeff, any thoughts on that?
Well, obviously, March 1st, 2021 isn't very good right now. I would say if this passes where there is no emergency clause, then having it go into effect when the ordinance actually goes into effect. I would like there to be a little bit of a lag between the day that it passes and when we start getting the registrations, because I want to give the administration a bit more of a buffer to finalize the mechanics of how to process it. So maybe the earliest, it comes into effect the earliest point by law, which would be 30 days after it's passed.
Well,
and then
good,
through December. I mean, it's not going to be one day.
Sure. And if that seems short, we could, a 9-month period was offered here. We'll see, how the general council feels about that. Jeff, do you have any thoughts on 12102D?
I think 30 days from when the ordinance is passed to the end of the year would be appropriate in my view.
Excellent. Thank you, Jeff. The next section, E, states that after the initial registration period, if there's a change in ownership or a change in the manager, that property owners would have 30 days to inform the city of those changes. That seems like a large window to me. I have no concerns about the way that's written. Jeff? Bill, sorry about that.
No, that's fine.
That's good.
The only concern I would have is that we have yet to put the form together. We don't know how extensive it's going to be. I raised the issue at the last meeting that ideally we would want to envision what a report and what a database would be like, and then fashion the form to fit that as far as designing the form. If there's, say 3 sections to the form, it's not, it's 1 page, 3 sections. What about other parts that may change? Maybe some of them don't, like the number of tenants or whatever, the square footage, those probably wouldn't change. So that's just one thing to keep in mind is right now this mentions basically the contact and the ownership. There may be something else that we may want to add that is important to have within 30 days. We don't know that yet because we don't have the form. So I guess it's a good placeholder for now.
Okay. Any thoughts on that, Jeff?
Yeah, I guess my thinking would be just to make, anytime there is a change in any material information that's been submitted, update the form within 30 days. I wouldn't, go into change of ownership, but I mean, ultimately this third page here, this looks like a good form, right? Pretty straightforward, 3 sections, very basic information.
Yes, it does. And, I guess let me just bring up that aspect for the sake of the audience. But, what we have before us is the brief draft I've basically just read almost all of. And then there's a registration form that perhaps has been seen by some of the parties with us tonight. As Jeff says, very simple form, address, property type, whether it be single family, duplex, number of bedrooms is on that, and / sleeping rooms has been suggested. And then the further parts on the form are the name of the property owner, the address, and the authorized agent, if that's applicable. This is indeed a simple form, Jeff. And, as we look at the Fuller ordinance, there's a greater checklist that we may require of property owners that is certainly more than just a number of bedrooms. It's I haven't looked at it today, but there's quite a few more categories, and the only question on this form is basically number of bedrooms. So the official checklist will have, should that be passed by council, will have a lot more meat to it. And maybe at that point, we would have to revisit if we're still comfortable with the 30-day notification aspect. But in terms of this simple registration form, I have no qualms with it as written.
Mr. Chair, would this be, and I think this was in some of the material, would this be per apartment or per apartment complex?
I haven't seen it written. I'm sorry, what was that, Mike?
Okay, so if there's a building that has 6 rental units, 3 on first floor, 3 on the second floor, that would be 6 registrations. Okay. Okay.
And just to make sure I'm catching you, Mike, the 7,000 number does include that kind of complex with multiple units then? Okay, thank you. Bill, did you have an additional question about that? Aspect.
It seems to me, and correct me if my memory is in error, it seems to me that at some point we had talked about per location, meaning if there was a building that had 6 units, that at some point of the process that would count as one.
We dealt with that.
Okay.
Buildings of-
Okay. So the question then,
I don't think,
I thought you were getting that out of the way. I thought that's why-
no, I don't think Jeff
It
can.
worked out great because I couldn't see either one of them. All right.
Yeah, I don't think he can hear.
Oh, all right. Okay, go ahead. Where
so,
were?
so the masks aren't enough. You won't want to see any of us.
No, the mayor's going to order blindfolds tonight. I don't know if you're aware of that. We're going to be masked and blindfolded. but, yeah. Wasn't that true?
So Mike, you had started talking about the Fuller ordinance and complexes, I believe.
Yeah. For the portion you don't have, that's coming later, I guess, the inspection ordinance, there were exemptions for what I would call complexes or buildings where they're getting annually inspected by our fire department and that sort of thing because of their size. So I think that's where we took up the issue of number of units. But in terms of registration, it was always our intention to get every one of them so we know how many there are and where they are.
Great, thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Appreciate it.
So then it becomes a question of how do we gather the information? Do we want to have one form per building or one form per rental unit? And it could be that many of the forms, and depending on the rental complex, may have the same thing, just repeated, the same form repeated a number of times, or whether we have some incorporation of a shortcut where they can list a number of units or the number of units for the registration.
Bill, the trouble with bunching them up is we were gonna go by address because of the GIS system.
Okay.
And even a building that might have 5 rental units has 5 addresses. You know what I mean?
And they couldn't be listed all in the same
Yeah.
form.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Hmm.
Yeah. And it's a one-time, I mean, yeah, it's probably a little bit burdensome, but this is a one-time registration system. So we're not doing this every year. We're doing it one time unless ownership changes. So while it might be a pain in the butt for some particular large landlords, like one in particular that's probably cussing at me under his mask, I think, once we do it one time, we have it. And with our GIS system, we now have an individual registration for each address. And it gives us a base from where to go. So that was really the suggestion of planning, and I think they'd like to see it that way.
Okay.
Thank you, Mike. Any more questions or thoughts, Bill and Jeff, as we go to what would be the second page? So the registration is, as defined, simple form required for each property, as the city attorney has elaborated. And the only other section that we have before us tonight, pulled out of the Fuller ordinance, is section 120-108, which is that any person or entity who fails to register will be subject to a civil citation of $250 for each week the dwelling is not registered.
That's per dwelling. So if there was an apartment complex and somehow didn't get registered at 6 units, that would be 250 times 6.
So if that is what is written here, I guess I would propose that it would be $250 per street address or per form that is supposed to be submitted, but it has not been submitted.
Does that alleviate do you feel that alleviates the large sum that Bill might be talking about? I mean, because
No, not at all.
if each unit should be submitting a form, that's still 6 times 250. Have I lost you, Jeff?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it was on my end. Right. So we are having each unit go. Can you go over that section again? If I've got an apartment building with 10 apartments, apartment 1 through 10, same street address, I need to turn in 10 of these forms.
That's what the explanation was, and the rationale for it was each of those 10 units has a different address.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right, Jeff.
Okay, I misunderstood that. I mean, $250 per unit in, the scenario that Bill outlined just seems a little bit lofty to me.
Well, probably, to be honest with you, I don't think we're gonna have problems from the large landlords. I think if there's an issue in enforcement with these, it's gonna be the person in Timbuktu that owns one rental property on Frazee or something. We can't find them and we can't make them comply. But we can word it however you want. Obviously, I just made it up, so there's no pride in authorship there. We can say whatever you want.
Thanks
And
again,
maybe
Mike.
keep thinking about it, yeah.
Yeah.
But that can be anything you want until you pass it.
Sure. Yeah, and I think in the name of moving this along to the full council, 10 times or 6 times 250 does seem excessive to me also, but I don't think we need to decide that right now. And perhaps Mike is right that we wouldn't see that in the large complexes. So what I would like to do, knowing we might revisit different aspects and certainly the fine aspect, is entertain a motion on passing this to the full council if either of you are comfortable with that.
One note is at our previous meeting, we did vote on defining bedroom, and we did vote on the fair housing exemptions. And then tonight, I guess, unvoted them. So, and leaving a few of the items for determination later won't send as clear a message to the full council. If the question is from the full council, what did the Community Improvement Committee recommend? Instead of saying this, the committee it would be, well, this, except, yeah, maybe this, maybe not. And then over here, maybe this, maybe not. So regardless, it would be nice to have a summary document that's sent to council saying these are a few outstanding issues. We put a placeholder in and may need a fuller discussion later.
If that works for you, Bill, that's terrific. I don't mean to be unvoting, but I do mean to be getting closure. And we will not get closure any other way than trying to vote on this tonight, knowing there will be parsing and revisions. And we'll make sure that everyone knows what was negated from that first meeting. So I'll make a motion just because it's we got 5 minutes left. I move that we pass this along to the full council in the absence of a vocabulary section as written, which would be in the absence of a vocabulary section, and with the removal of the exemptions. Do I have a second?
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Do we call a roll, okay? No?
No, you can just say all in favor.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it. Our meeting will be coming to a close in a minute, though. We do have some folks here tonight. Just like to announce what to expect on Thursday. There's been some allusions to a Fuller ordinance that's been shared with the East Side Group as they asked, and I've shared it with the Homeowner Association. It's a draft that was put out last year in the middle of our deliberations, and it was proposed by the administration, and I've spoken about that draft in a few meetings with some revisions I would argue for. So my plan for Thursday is to basically ask that we all reread the recommendations from the committee, speak to that, but that we also address the draft that I just referred to and Mike Marsh has referred to this evening. In kind of a last minute development, seeing more interest tonight than we've seen during the pandemic, we are going to have a part of the meeting on Thursday be a public hearing. We may be there 2 hours. We hope to be there at the most 2 hours, but we're going to have the first 45 minutes max be a public hearing, and then we'll go into our deliberations. Yes. And Kay, remind me of the time.
6 o'clock.
The meeting that I'm speaking of is this Thursday, April 8th at 6 o'clock in the new Veterans Building in City Park. It's a bigger venue, so we moved there thinking that if people wanted to attend, it would be more spacious room. So thank you, Kay, for the reminder.
And Mr. Chair, we've had, as you know, as everyone here knows, we've had quite a few public hearings before the pandemic hit. And that was to discuss the idea of registration, licensing, and inspection in general. And now we've got a draft of the licensing, although licensing isn't mentioned, and inspection. I think it would be the best use of the time if the not to keep anyone from speaking, but to have the public hearing geared more toward the specific legislation, because I myself would dearly love to hear feedback on the specific draft legislation from those that it will affect. So that's I'll listen to anything, because I mean that's what we do, but I'm particularly interested in if there's comments about the mechanics or how it would work or any suggestions related to the draft licensing and inspection.
Thank you, Bill. Excellent addition, Bill. Thank you. And if anyone does not have a copy of the draft that we're referring to, please feel free to contact me and I'll get that off to you. Thank you very much for coming tonight. We'll be closing the meeting now. Thank you. With a minute to spare, okay?
Good job. I don't either. Rachel,
Yep.
you can go ahead and start.
Okay. All right. So the public hearing on ordinance 8911 is now open. A public hearing is a meeting that provides the opportunity for public discussion regarding the ordinances and other matters pending before City Council. Today, ordinance 8911 is at issue. Ordinance 8911 establishes interim zoning of M3 business park zoning for the approximately 10.822 acres of land located on Bowling Green Road West and annexed to the city as petitioned for by Richard and Judith Carpenter. Interested parties may express their views and submit evidence supporting those views at this public hearing. The information shared will become part of the city's permanent record and may be used by the members of City Council in deciding whether or not to adopt the ordinance. There are four parts to this public hearing: the staff report, the applicant's testimony, public testimony, and discussion by members of City Council. We will now receive the staff report from the Planning Director, Heather Saylor.
Good evening. I emailed you earlier handouts for tonight, and then I handed out paper copies to those here. Subject of the hearing is interim zoning of annexed property. The petitioners are Richard and Judith Carpenter. They are not here tonight, so my assumption is that they will not have any testimony. The location really has frontage along Bowling Green Road East, which would then be called East Wooster Street, as you can see by the map here on the screen. Much of the surrounding zoning is M3 Business Park, which is what Planning Commission recommended at their regular meeting on March 3rd. I gave you a copy of the M3 Business Park zoning so you can see the allowed uses. And then, of course, the map was part of that. Is there any specific questions? I mean, basically, it's because they did want utility service from the city to operate their cell tower there that's being leased. And that has been completed for construction and is in use now. As you can see to the north, there is currently Woodstream Drive that we anticipate will be expanded at some point with Woodbridge Business Park. So for now, though, it's just a vacant piece of property, a little over 10 acres. So that is it, unless you have any questions.
Okay, thanks, Heather. Any questions for Heather?
I have none.
I have none. Thank you, Rachel.
Okay. So usually we would hear any applicant testimony at this point in the public hearing, but it doesn't sound like Judith, Carpenter are there. So we will move on to any testimony from the public. Okay, is there anyone there that would like to address this body?
I don't believe that there is, and I have not received anything via email or regular mail. either
Okay.
from citizens.
Okay, thank you. So now the members of council will discuss this ordinance. John and Greg.
Yeah, I have no issues with this. This is pretty straightforward. I intend to support this ordinance.
Thank you, Greg. Yeah, I feel the same way. It's very straightforward. It's been to the Planning Commission with a recommendation, of course, and I plan on supporting it, Rachel.
Okay, as do I. Okay, thanks everyone for their participation. This concludes the public hearing on ordinance 8911.
There you go.
Me and
Jump
the
on there.
I think that's real high.
Makes you
I
think
think you can just pull on it, it'll,
getting
I
old.
went down a little bit anyway.
it'll probably sink.
We
down
have?
immediately.
Wow.
I'm
Yeah, they are
lower
getting
and
old.
lower. I went to a bar. Very slowly, you're sitting at the bar and all of a sudden you realize the person is there. You're down here, you won't look up and down.
Ready.
Okay, will you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, everyone, for being here this evening. Kay, could you call the roll, please?
Dennis,
Yes, here.
Harold,
Here.
Hollenbaugh,
Here?
Phipps,
Here.
Robinette,
Here.
Roland,
Here,
Zanfordino.
Here.
Okay, the minutes from our March 15th, 2021 meeting have been distributed for your perusal. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the minutes of the Bowling Green City Council meeting on March 15th, 2021.
second,
All right, properly moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
aye.
Opposed, same sign. All righty. Correspondence. Kay, do we have any correspondence this evening?
Yes. From the finance director, I have a listing of budget transfers to be made for this month, and those were distributed to you prior to the meeting, and they require your approval.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the budget transfers?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, properly moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay,
And then I also have from the Ohio Division of Liquor Control, an application for a D1, D2 liquor permit for Tribeca Concepts LLC located at 1424 Worcester Street. And that was distributed to you also on Friday. Check of the records and no information was noted. And then your memo that I gave you about the agency. I
Sure.
forgot to make myself a copy.
Sure.
Thank you. Also have a board and commission appointment requested by Mayor Osbacher, and it is an appointment to the Human Relations Commission of Anna Brown for a 3-year term ending 5/31/2024, and that requires your approval as well.
Mr. President,
Mr. Harold.
I move that we enthusiastically approve Anna Brown to be a member of the Human Relations Commission.
Mr. President, I enthusiastically seconded. I believe that Anna is a wonderful person for Bowling Green to have on its Human Relations Commission.
Okay. All right, all who enthusiastically approve the appointment of Anna Brown to the Human Relations Commission, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Brown.
And the last thing that I have is I have received the municipal court annual report, and I have copies for each of you, and I'll be sure that you get those, and that needs to be noted for the record.
Okay,
And that's all I have.
all right. Item number 5 on my agenda, is that something that's a leftover from last time?
Yes, and we
Okay,
don't have any of those this evening.
okay. That brings us to lobby visitation.
No one has signed up.
Okay. Introduction of new legislation.
Mr. President,
Mr. Robinette.
I have an ordinance authorizing participation in the ODOT road salt contracts awarded in 2021 and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President,
Mr. Harold.
I have from the Transportation and Safety Committee, I have a resolution authorizing the filing of a grant proposal and/or application and the execution of a contract and/or grant agreement for calendar year 2021 and calendar year 2022 for the Rides to Community Immunity Program through the Ohio Department of Transportation.
Mr. President,
Ms. Phipps,
I have 3 ordinances from the Planning, Zoning, and Economic Development Committee. The first is an ordinance amending and adopting sections of Chapter 98 of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Bowling Green, Ohio regarding rights-of-way management and declaring an emergency. The second is an ordinance accepting annexation of approximately 20.384 acres of land in Plain Township, Wood County, Ohio, from the City of Bowling Green petitioner. And the third is an ordinance establishing interim zoning of RC recreational conservation zoning for approximately 18.51 acres of land on South Winter Garden Road, recently annexed to the City of Bowling Green as petitioned for by the City of Bowling Green.
okay. That brings us to official reports. Mr. Mayor.
Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to take a couple of minutes this evening and highlight the fact that April is Federal Fair Housing Month. This is something that is pretty routinely done. On Friday, I did present the proclamation, which again is pretty standard, to the Human Relations Commission. And at that meeting, I wanted to take a couple of minutes and stress just a couple of the sections of the number of whereases, but I don't want to read them all, but I did want to read just a bit of it to emphasize the content because I think it's important. The City of Bowling Green supports fair housing efforts to eliminate discrimination in housing by providing education to seekers of housing, rental property owners and managers, and others regarding state and federal fair housing laws, monitors local advertising for potential fair housing violations, and reports violations of the Fair Housing Acts to the Ohio Civil Rights Commission. And the conclusion of the proclamation is acknowledging the city's endorsement and commitment to the policy of fair and equal access to housing, and further encourages the citizens of this municipality to acquaint themselves with their rights that are protected under the law and join in reaffirming a commitment to fair housing for all, regardless of race, color, religion, nation of origin, sex, familial status, or handicap disability. Again, I wanted to take just a couple of minutes and highlight those sections because this is something longstanding tradition in Bowling Green and certainly very important that we, during this month, take the time to recognize those protections and those values that are important to all of us. So that concludes my report, pending any questions that you may have.
Are there any questions for the mayor this evening? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Municipal Administrator, Ms. Treader.
Good evening. As you can see, we have reduced staffing here again this evening, although we do have a few folks here. On behalf of Public Works Director Brian Kraft, do want to remind folks that it is time to schedule your brush pickup. So please get online to schedule your address or call our Public Works Department and schedule your address for your brush pickup for April. That will then be picked up the week of April 19th. And that's all I have this evening, subject to your questions.
Are there any questions for Ms. Treader this morning or this evening? It's been a long day. All right, thank you very
Thank you.
much. Planning Director. Are there any questions for Ms. Saylor this evening? All right, thank you very much. And brings Mr. Marsh. Mr. Marsh, any report this evening? Are there any questions for Mr. Marsh this evening? All right. Council committee reports.
Mr. President,
Mr. Zanfordino.
this evening we had another Community Improvement Committee meeting, and we looked at Chapter 121, the sections that pertain to rental registration, and we made a suggestion or two regarding the current draft of that, specifically removing the exemptions acknowledging there's no vocabulary section, and we've asked that that be moved on to the full council.
Any other council committee reports this evening?
Yeah, Mr. President, I would like to take this time to go over a report that I know was emailed, but as well, there's a copy for each member here as well as Kay. So, 3+ years ago, we received the Community Action Plan, the CAP report. And a little over two years ago, we received the East Wooster Street White Paper. And a great deal has been accomplished since these two reports were presented. About 3 years ago as well, when I was the chairman of the Planning, Zoning, and Economic Development Committee, I took on the role and worked to achieve consensus among council members for a top 10 list of CAP priorities to be implemented. And I made a commitment back then to all of you that we would communicate with the administration and with council and periodically report on the city's progress toward completing those priorities on our list. So today, I'm just pleased to present a joint report on behalf of both the city council and the city administration that outlines the significant progress made to date in accomplishing CAP and East Wooster Street redevelopment goals. Again, I've given each of you a copy of the report and to the press. I would like to go over certain portions of it, not the whole document, but I think there are portions that need to be read into the record. The CAP, of course, was first published back in February of 2018, and the CAP includes a preferred plan developed by the contractor or the consultant that outlines overall priorities for the East Side neighborhood as well as residential areas surrounding downtown Bowling Green. The plan reflects stakeholder and task force comments and feedback generated through the community engagement process. That's a quote from the document. The preferred plan identified 61 individual priorities for the East Side neighborhood. And although the focus of the CAP was the east side of Bowling Green, a small number of the implemented initiatives will have a broader impact on the city. In April of 2018, this council identified 10 items from the CAP document as priorities for implementation. Since then, Bowling Green City Council has worked cooperatively with the city administration to address and implement 12 individual implementation recommendations. 3 additional implementation recommendations were completed as part of the newly approved Gateway Zoning District, and significantly 16 additional items from the CAP will be completed as part of the comprehensive zoning code update currently underway. As of the date of this report, over 50% of the recommendations outlined in the CAP have been implemented. Regarding the East Wooster Street Strategy for Redevelopment White Paper, that project was a collaborative between the City of Bowling Green and BGSU. With this effort, the white paper noted that the city and BGSU jointly established, quote, a hope to redevelop Wooster Street into a vibrant corridor that features high-quality development with diverse retail, dining, entertainment, employment, and residential options. Wooster Street is seen as an opportunity to create a unique identity for the community that can be used to attract students, faculty, residents, and employees. Again, that's from the document. This white paper was published in February of 2019 and included recommendations for the City of Bowling Green State University, and Wood County Hospital. The Midtown Improvement recommendation was the only recommendation upon which the city could act independently. So in 2019 and 2020, City Council developed and adopted a new Gateway Zoning District in direct response to the Midtown Improvement recommendation in the East Wooster Street White Paper. Now, in the document I just gave you, each implementation recommendation that was completed is provided on pages 2 and 3 of the document, and it lays them out in detail. This update also notes that the city has engaged a consultant to prepare this updated zoning code according to the goals and parameters established by the city. The city has asked the consultant to deliver this revised zoning code for action before the end of 2021. Accordingly, City Council should be able to review and adopt a new zoning code in late 2021 or early 2022. Thereafter, Bowling Green City Council and the city administration will review the remaining items identified in both the CAP and the East Wooster Street White Paper in view of current needs and goals to determine if any further action is warranted. I will then just note that 31 individual CAP priorities have been implemented between April 2018 and March of 2021. And again, they're all identified on pages 2 and 3 of this document in great detail. Regarding the East Wooster Street redevelopment white paper, again, the Gateway zoning district has been adopted by City Council now at the northwest corner of East Wooster Street and Thurston, and creates a significant opportunity for development in the East Wooster Street corridor near downtown. And coincidentally also incorporated 3 individual CAP priorities in that project as well. So in any case, I wanted to provide this update. We did have a gap in updating due to COVID, but I think this brings us up to date. It provides a great status of where we are. I appreciate the cooperation of the mayor and of Lori Treader and putting this together. But I think it sets us, everybody in the community, up for success, and it gives us a good document to show where we're at and where we've been and what we've really accomplished over the last 3 years. So that's what I have, Mr. President.
All right, thank you very much. Quite extensive. I think lots of times, some of the things we do, since they aren't necessarily involved in legislation, kind of get lost, and people aren't aware that progress is being made all the time. And thank you for being instrumental in putting this together for us. Are there any other reports?
Mr. President, I don't have a report, but I did want to thank Greg and the administration for putting this together. It's very helpful, and perhaps it could be incorporated in the minutes if that's not too bad.
I was planning to.
Okay. And it prompted me to recall that I had wanted to ask Lori Treader a question. So it's up to your discretion, Mr. President, but if it's possible, I'd like to ask her a question. If the time has passed, then I'll just chalk it up to my bad memory.
Well, it depends. Is she going to want to answer it?
I don't know.
Okay. Bill has a question.
I'm sorry, Lori.
No problem.
There was a question about the process that the city went through in determining how to apply our complete street resolution to the paving project, principally in front of the university on Wooster Street. And I don't need an answer now. I'm just curious that at some point there's an email, or if you wanted to address it now, just saying, okay, this is the process, the general process we go through for this specific project. We looked at this and had these constraints, et cetera. But I did want to at least bring that up.
Sure. We have looked at that. We can send an email, and then you can work from it from there if that works out for you. That way I can consult with my colleagues.
That would be fine. And if I have any questions, I'll bring it up at the next meeting.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Laurie. Thank you very much.
Okay. Reading of legislation.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I'm sorry. I need to schedule a public hearing for the Planning, Zoning, and Economic Development Committee on the interim zoning ordinance, that's being given its first reading tonight. It sounds like Kay told me that the 17th of May at 6:45 would work. Is that still the case?
Yes, that still works.
Okay, so
Okay.
let's plan on that.
Okay,
May
Thank you.
17th at 6:45.
that's correct.
All right. Is that it for council committee reports? Right. Okay, will you lead us in the reading of legislation?
Yes. Legislation for first reading. Resolution number 3792 for first reading. Resolution authorizing the filing of a grant proposal and/or application and the execution of a contract and/or grant agreement for CY 2021 and CY 2022 for the Rides to Community Immunity Program through the Ohio Department of Transportation.
Mr. President,
Mr. Harold.
I move that we suspend the rules and give Resolution 3792 its second and third readings.
Second?
Properly moved and seconded. Kay?
Harold,
Yes.
Hollenbaugh,
Yes.
Phipps,
Yes.
Robinette,
Yes.
Roland,
Yes.
Zanfordino,
Yes.
Dennis.
Yes.
Okay, the rules are suspended for Resolution 3792.
Resolution number 3792 for second and third reading, resolution authorizing the filing of a grant proposal and/or application and the execution of a contract and/or grant agreement for CY 2021 and CY 2022 for the Rides to Community Immunity Program through the Ohio Department of Transportation.
Mr. President,
Mr. Harold.
I move that we adopt Resolution 3792.
Second,
Okay, it's properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay,
Hollenbach,
yes.
Phipps,
Yes.
Robinette,
Yes.
Roland.
yes.
Zanfordino,
Yes.
Dennis,
Yes.
Harold.
Yes.
Okay. Resolution 3792 is adopted.
Ordinance number 8915 for first reading, ordinance authorizing participation in the ODOT road salt contracts awarded in 2021 and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President,
Mr. Robinette.
I move that we suspend the rules and give ordinance 8915 its second reading.
Second,
Okay, it's been properly moved and seconded. Okay,
Phipps,
Yes.
Robinette,
Yes.
Roland,
yes.
Zanfordino,
Yes.
Dennis,
Yes.
Harold,
Yes.
Hollenbach.
yes, okay. The rules have been suspended for ordinance 8915.
Ordinance number 8915 for second reading, ordinance authorizing participation in the ODOT road salt contracts awarded in 2021 and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President,
Mr. Robinette.
I move that we adopt the emergency clause for ordinance 8915.
Second,
Okay, properly moved and seconded. Okay,
Robinette,
Yes.
Roland,
yes.
Zanfordino,
Yes.
Dennis,
Yes.
Harold,
Yes.
Hollenbach,
yes.
Phipps.
Yes.
Okay, the emergency clause has been adopted for ordinance 8915.
Ordinance number 8916 for first reading, ordinance amending and adopting sections of Chapter 98 of the codified ordinances of the City of Bowling Green, Ohio regarding rights-of-way management and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President,
Ms. Phipps,
I move to suspend the rules and give ordinance 8916 its second reading.
Second.
okay, properly moved and seconded. Okay,
Roland,
Yes.
Zanfordino,
Yes.
Dennis,
Yes.
Harold,
Yes.
Hollenbach,
yes.
Phipps,
Yes.
Robinette.
Yes.
Okay, the rules are suspended for ordinance 8916.
Ordinance number 8916 for second reading, ordinance amending and adopting sections of Chapter 98 of the codified ordinances of the City of Bowling Green, Ohio regarding rights-of-way management and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President,
Ms. Phipps,
I move to adopt the emergency clause for ordinance 8916.
Second,
properly moved and seconded. Okay,
Zanfordino,
Yes.
Dennis,
Yes.
Harold,
Yes.
Hollenbach,
yes.
Phipps,
Yes.
Robinette,
Yes.
Roland.
yes.
Okay, the emergency clause is adopted for ordinance 8916.
Ordinance number
Mr. President.
8917.
Yep, go ahead, Bill.
There's been a lot of work put into ordinance 8916, and I would think it appropriate to give Rachel a chance to give an overview of this ordinance, since there's been so much time put into it, if she would like to give an overview.
Sure. The actual ordinance itself, or what we're putting in ordinance, is pretty straightforward. The actual work has been done by the city, coming up with all of the design standards for what will hopefully be our new parklet program. So thank you to Heather and really Lori. It went through every department. So they have been the ones that have done a lot of work.
All right. Well done, everyone.
Ordinance number 8917 for first reading, ordinance accepting annexation of approximately 20.384 acres of land in Plain Township, Wood County, Ohio, from the City of Bowling Green petitioner. Ordinance number 8918 for first reading, ordinance establishing interim zoning of RC recreational conservation zoning for for approximately 18.51 acres of land on South Winter Garden Road, recently annexed to the City of Bowling Green as petitioned for by the City of Bowling Green. Legislation for second reading. Ordinance number 8914 for second reading. Ordinance authorizing the Utilities Director to advertise a request for qualifications and enter into a contract or contracts for engineering services for improvements to the Carter Park Water Tower. Legislation for third reading. Resolution number 3790 for third reading. Resolution authorizing the filing of an application with the Ohio Department of Transportation for grants through the U.S. Department of Transportation, Federal Transit Administration, as authorized under federal transit laws as codified 49 U.S.C. Section 5311, formula grants for rural areas, Ohio's Rural Transportation Program, and/or the Ohio Transit Partnership Program, and executing a contract for the fiscal year 2022 Ohio Elderly and Disabled Transit Fare Assistance Program, and 5339 and/or 5311 funding for capital and/or operating assistance, and the Ohio Transit Partnership Program, and executing a contract with the Ohio Department of Transportation upon project approval.
Mr. President,
Mr. Harold.
I move that we adopt Resolution 3790.
Second?
Okay, properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay.
Dennis,
Yes.
Harold,
Yes.
Hollenbaugh,
Yes.
Phipps,
Yes.
Robinette,
Yes.
Roland,
yes,
Zanfordino.
Yes.
Okay, resolution 3790 is adopted.
Ordinance number 8907 for third reading. Ordinance to provide for the issuance and sale of bonds in the maximum principal amount of $8,885,000 for the purpose of paying costs of constructing, furnishing, and equipping a new city administrative services building, including the demolition of a portion of a building currently on the proposed site and the old city building, clearing and improving those sites, constructing and paving a parking lot and related entry drives, and including landscaping together with necessary and incidental appurtenances and such other costs of those improvements as are permitted by revised code section 133.15 to be funded from the proceeds of securities and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President,
Mr. Robinette.
I move that we adopt ordinance 8907.
second,
Properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay,
Harold,
Yes.
Hollenbaugh,
yes.
Phipps,
Yes.
Robinette,
Yes.
Roland,
yes,
Zanfordino,
Yes.
and Dennis.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 8907 is adopted.
Ordinance number 8908 for third reading. Ordinance to provide for the issuance and sale of bonds in the maximum principal amount of $1,115,000 for the purpose of paying costs of improving the city's park and recreation facilities by constructing, furnishing, and including landscaping, paving an entry drive and parking lot, and construction of a patio together with necessary and incidental appurtenances and such other costs of those improvements as are permitted by revised code section 133.15 to be funded from the proceeds of securities and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President,
Mr. Robinette.
I move that we adopt ordinance 8908.
second,
Properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay, could you call the roll?
Hollenbaugh,
Yes.
Phipps,
Yes.
Robinette,
Yes.
Roland,
yes,
Zanfordino,
Yes.
Dennis,
Yes.
Harold.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 8908 is adopted.
Ordinance number 8909 for third reading. Ordinance to provide for the issuance and sale of bonds in the maximum principal amount of $3 million for the purpose of refunding at a lower interest cost for certain of the city's outstanding various purpose improvement and refunding bonds, Series 2013, dated March 13, 2013, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President,
Mr. Robinette.
I move that we adopt ordinance 8909.
second,
Properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay,
Phipps,
Yes.
Robinette,
Yes.
Roland.
Yes.
Zanfordino,
Yes.
Dennis,
Yes.
Harold,
Yes.
Hollenbaugh.
Yes. Ordinance 8909 is adopted.
Ordinance number 8910 for third reading. Ordinance accepting annexation of approximately 10.822 acres of land in Center Township, Wood County, Ohio, from Richard E. and Judith L. Carpenter petitioners.
Mr. President,
Ms. Phipps?
I move to adopt ordinance 8910.
Second?
Properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay,
Robinette,
Yes.
Roland.
Yes.
Zanfordino,
Yes.
Dennis,
Yes.
Harold,
Yes.
Hollenbaugh,
yes.
Phipps.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 8910 is adopted.
Ordinance number 8911 for third reading. Ordinance establishing interim zoning of M3 Business Park zoning for the approximately 10.822 acres of land located on Bowling Green Road West and recently annexed to the city as petitioned for by Richard E. and Judith L. Carpenter.
Mr. President,
Ms. Phipps?
I move to adopt ordinance 8911.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay, could you call the roll?
Roland,
Yes.
Zanfordino,
Yes.
Dennis,
Yes.
Harold,
Yes.
Hollenbaugh,
Yes.
Phipps,
Yes.
Robinette.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 8911 is adopted. Is there any other business to come before council this evening? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Okay, properly moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, we stand adjourned.